I'm Gregorio, and on behalf of the Diversity League and the We Need Diverse Books teams, I wanted to thank you all for your passion for diverse books and diverse authors. If there's anything that we've learned this year, it's that diverse books can change lives, and librarians are truly the front line of that fight. And we want to thank you again, and we have so much gratitude for your willingness to continually search for new voices and untold stories. So moderating our panel today is Danielle Paige. Danielle is a graduate of Columbia who turned to young adult literature after working in the TV industry. She's the winner of a Writers Guild of America award and was nominated for several daytime Emmys. Her debut novel, Dorothy Must Die, and its sequel, The Wicked Will Rise, have been pitched as Kill Bill Meet the Wizard of Oz. Thank you all.
I'm so excited to be here. I love ALA, and it's my first time, and I love librarians and libraries, so yeah, I'm going to skip the part where I introduce myself, because she just did it for me. I am just so thrilled and honored to be here, and this week and the last couple of nights, I had the honor of reading these wonderful, awe-inspiring, breathtaking, heartbreaking, amazing books. So I'm going to just start by introducing everybody. And I put it on my iPad. Sorry, you guys. Okay. Sona, I'm going to say it wrong. Charaipotra is an entertainment journalist who's written for everyone from the New York Times to Teen Vogue. She's the author of the dance drama Tiny Pretty Things, co-written with Danielle Paige, the co-founder of Cake Literary, a boutique book development company with a decidedly diverse bent. And yes, she totally wanted to be a ballerina when she was little. Me too. Eileen Gregorio is a practicing surgeon by day, masked avenging YA writer by night, and author of None of the Above. Pitched as Middlesex meets Mean Girls, about a homecoming queen who discovers in her senior year that she's born intersex, neither a girl nor a boy, but something in between. Fonda is a recovering corporate strategist and author of Zero Boxer, about a young man battling to make it to the top of the world of zero gravity, prize fighting, and brewing interplanetary conflict between Earth and Mars. Miranda is a former teacher and a picture book author whose debut, One Plastic Bag, is Situ Sise and the Recycling Women of Gambia. Celebrates ingenuity and grassroots activism through the inspiring story of 5 villagers who launched a fair trade cooperative in the 1990s. Silvera is a bookseller and a book reviewer and author of More Happy Than Not, a speculative novel about a 16-year-old boy in the Bronx who wants to undergo a memory alteration procedure to forget he's gay. Sabaa Tahir is a lover of all things and an author of An Ember in the Ashes, a book about an orphan girl fighting for her family and a tormented soldier fighting for his freedom. Nicola Yoon grew up in Jamaica and Brooklyn, part of Long Island. Everything is about a girl who literally is allergic to the outside world. So allergic, in fact, that she's never left her house in all of 17 years. When a new family moves in next door, she begins a complicated romance that challenges everything that she's ever known. The narrative unfolds via vignettes, diary entries, IMs, tax charts, lists, illustrations, and more. Francesca Zappia is a senior at the University of Indianapolis. How can you write this good this early? I'm so jealous. Okay, her debut, Made You Up, pitched for fans of Wes Anderson, is about a girl with a paranoid schizophrenia who struggles to tell the difference between reality and delusion, and who, in her senior year of high school, finds out that sometimes there really is someone out to get you. Okay. So I think we're all going to answer the same 2 questions, or you could choose to answer one of them. So what book was the book that is the mirror for you, that was the first book that you found yourself in? And then what book is the window for you, the first book that you found another culture, another person, another point of view? For me, can you hear me? It's okay, yeah. Ready? Okay, so you can consider. Yeah, I'll answer 2, but you guys go first.
No, go
okay. So I'm way older than all of you, so I was reading like Sweet Valley High and then lots of classics, and there weren't any options, no diverse options, just not a lot of options when I was a kid. So I'd say my first African-American author that I read was Maya Angelou, and I know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which was beautiful, but not my personal experience. But I loved it because it showed me that a Black woman could write so wonderfully and that she could do so well. And she was, for me, it's a story about a 9-year-old girl who's mute because something horrible has happened to her, and she still ended up writing and surviving. And I was a little girl who wanted to write, and I got to do that. So that's my first answer. And my second one is about a window. And I would say that there still weren't a lot of options for me, so I stole a book from my mom's nightstand, and it was Like Water for Chocolate, which was not a teen book, but it was a story about girls who were growing up, and there was magic, and it was a different world than magical realism, which I never read before, and it was really beautiful, and I loved it. So those are mine. You guys go.
Okay, the mirror for me didn't come until I was about 19, which is saying a lot about diversity, but it was a book called Bombay Talkie by Amina Mir, and it wasn't considered YA back then, but it would be YA now. And she came to Rutgers, and I went to the signing and met her, and she was like a real person who was brown, who had published a book. And in my book, she wrote, "Sona, you're going to be golden," because she knew I wanted to be a writer too, and that really changed things for me.
So for my mirror book is The Year of the Born Jackie Robinson by Betty Ballard, which by now is a classic. I think it's been out for several decades. And I remember the flash of recognition that I experienced when I first saw the cover and saw an Asian girl on the cover. And it was amazing because the main character is Shirley Temple Wong, and that my last name is my secret last name. My real last name is Wong, and I remember just being so flabbergasted by that. At the same time, though, looking back, I think that book is telling because it was so not my experience. So Shirley Temple Wong was a first-generation immigrant in a metropolitan area in New York, where there are lots of other Asian children. I grew up second generation in upstate New York, like central New York, like the Alabama part of New York, and I was one of 2 Asian kids in my school. And it just goes to show that there's diversity within diversity. So even though there are diverse books out there, and people are like, oh, look at there's this diverse book, you can read that. It's not the same. There are so many stories within each subcategory of diversity. The window book that I always talk about is actually Mercedes Lackey's Magic's Pawn series, which is a fantasy series that I picked up without knowing what it was about, but in learning halfway through that the main character was gay. And again, I grew up in central New York, upstate New York, where gay was a slur. You know, people talked about being gay meant being uncool. And I use that word without thinking, and that book completely changed my life and single-handedly erased any latent homophobia I may have had.
So I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy when I was growing up. Obviously, I write it now. And if anything, I think my genre was particularly egregious for lacking in diversity when I was a kid. I mean, I read a lot of elves and druids and wizards. I read a lot of Asimov. I mean, those are not what you would think of as diverse reads. And, you know, I could never really picture myself in those worlds, even though I loved them so much and I devoured them. I think for me, the first book that I considered a mirror was Catherine Patterson's Sign of the Chrysanthemum and The Master Puppeteer, and those were really the first books I read that had Asian protagonists. And I think it was probably about 15 or 20 years later that I read Alison Goodman's Eon and Iona duology, and I think that kicked off for me a renewed love for YA, because I realized, wow, like there is, I mean, all these stories, all the fantasy worlds that I've experienced so far are really Eurocentric. And there were stories that my dad would tell me when I was a little kid that were Asian-based that I kind of never paid attention to because I was so in the world of druids and wizards and so on. So that was a really transformative experience for me.
So I'm actually going to start with my window book, I was a very early reader, and one of the first books that I remember seeing a brown character was Ezra Jack Keats' The Snowy Day. Still one of my children's favorite books, a classic. I hope it never ever goes out of print. And then I'm going to talk about a mirror book, in that I was in college before I ever read a book that had an interracial couple or an interracial family, and that was Pay It Forward. And when the movie came out and it was made, the character who is black in the novel is white in the movie. And so Hollywood had made that change, and I remember being so upset because that book, for me, was the first time that I saw that it was in the book and it wasn't a major, issue. I mean, there's issues that come up, but it wasn't, labeled an issue book. I mean, it was an amazing book that went on to sell a lot of copies and has a wonderful message. And then Hollywood made a very conscious choice to change the race of a character.
My window book, the book is about a gay teenager, so I guess there aren't tons of middle grade or chapter books about gay kids at this point in time, but I think for me it was Stella Luna by Janelle Cannon, which was, if anything, it kind of taught me a lot about empathy, because it's about this fruit bat who gets separated from her family and has to live with these birds for a good time, and she has to learn how to sleep right side up and just go against her bat nature and everything. And so I think that was very informative for me, and especially as a kid. My mirror book, just to kind of chorus what Sonia said, I didn't really read a solid LGBT book until I was maybe, let's say, 20. I'm 24 now, and actually no, lie, 20. It was 20. I was 22 when I read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and that book really just kind of blew me away. And of course, I'm growing up in a generation where there was a wider selection of LGBT books out finally, but I think I was having a hard time finding them. And obviously, Two Boys Kissing by David Levithan, not just because he's in the audience, but because that book kept me up until 4 a.m. and really gave me the history that I personally missed out on and wished other books had kind of accomplished sooner. So.
24? That's not fair. His book is wonderful. So my mirror book was called Seven Daughters and Seven Sons. It was, it was the first time that I had seen a woman from my part of the world who was not oppressed, who was strong, who was portrayed as someone who was not just loyal to her family, but who was brave and who was going to buck tradition and go out and find her fortune. The character's name was Buran, and she, in the book, she leaves her family because they're really struggling, and she goes to basically make her way in the world as a man. It was in 4th grade. I found it on a back shelf, and I actually, probably in 2 years, I read this book 20 times, and I was obsessed. And I actually asked the librarian if I could have it, and she was really cool, and she was like, well, you could lose it. And I didn't, because I was a goody-goody, but I did find a copy later, which is sort of, in a holy place in my house. So, and my window book was Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. I did not realize what the South was like for African Americans, and it was actually weirdly reassuring because it was sort of my experience growing up in my hometown, which was very isolated. So it really showed me, one, that I wasn't alone, and two, it gave me a better sense of what was actually going on in other parts of the country. So
my mirror book would have to be The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. It's just so beautiful, it's important, it just affects you to see yourself on the page, which is why being a part of this organization is so amazing, because I would love to see my daughter see herself on the page. My window book, I have a few things. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy, which is beautiful. Harold and Kumar, which is a movie, but I love this movie and it's my entire college experience. So I love that they're like Korean kids and Indian kids who just they get to screw up like everyone else. And they smoke a a lot of puns. It's wonderful. And then The Little Prince, which I think is great, which is one of my favorite books of all time too. And in the book, he literally travels from to different planets and meets different people. And our world is so big, and the universe is so big, and we're all a part of it, and it's important that everyone sees themselves.
Okay, being a white, straight little girl from the suburbs of Indiana gave me a lot of mirror books. So, but my window books, there weren't, like, at the library where I grew up was not very big, and all of the books were about straight white children. So the one I found when I was in, I think, 5th grade was The House of the Scorpion by Nancy Farmer, which is a sci-fi book set in a near-future Mexico, I believe. And it was just really cool because it was like, it wasn't about them being in Mexico, but their culture and the landscape and everything tied into the story, and it was like, oh, they're just doing adventure stuff like people in other adventure stories do. Like, it's not weird, it's just how the book is. So, and I still love that book, and I need to read the second one.
Can you guys, everyone scoot in a little bit so that everyone can get in? Thank you. My next question is also a two-parter because we don't have a lot of time. One, do you guys worry at all about getting pigeonholed for writing something that's diverse? And two, did you get any pushback or have any difficulty finding a home for your book? And we're going to end with you, Sona, because we want you to talk about peak literary. So start on the other end.
Okay, so do I worry about being pigeonholed, and is it... what was your publishing experience? Did you get any pushback? Was it finding a home for your book? How was it? I don't really worry about being pigeonholed because you should just put diversity in your books anyway. Like, it shouldn't be like a thing that you have to be like, oh, I'm going to make my book diverse. It should just be, these are people, they should go in a story. Like, it's not, I don't think it's a question of being pigeonholed. Pushback, it was kind of like, because when I was submitting this, they were like, well, I don't know about mental illness, and I don't know if this is portrayed completely right, and it's kind of a touchy subject, and it's like, well, then we need more books about it if it's that touchy. So
I agree.
Yeah, I don't worry about being pigeonholed. I mean, I'm writing for the world that my daughter is going to grow up in. I'm writing for a world where we don't necessarily have to call out diversity because it just is a part of everything. So I don't worry about that. What was the second part of the question?
What was your publishing experience?
No, my publishing experience has been just unbelievably good. And I have the best editor in the world who's sitting right there. I mean, I've had such a good time, and I just feel like now is the time for us to, like make Harry Potter with an African American kid or an Indian kid or someone who's gay. We just need stories with people of color that are universal and adventurous and not an issue book, and I think we're getting there.
I definitely don't see my book as being pigeonholed. It's a fantasy, and it's a high fantasy, and that's pretty much it. I don't think that as someone who happens to be South Asian that I should be forced into writing books about the immigrant experience. I think that I should be able to write whatever I want. That's why America is awesome. So I definitely don't worry about it being pigeonholed because it's just a fantasy. That's what it is at its heart. I'm sorry, I forgot the second question.
Was it hard finding a home for your book?
Absolutely not. I have had no pushback. No issues there. It's been wonderful. It hasn't even really come up, which is again what makes this experience so wonderful. It's not about, oh, you're brown and so you should do this. It's just been about the book that I've written. So.
I don't think I was ever intentionally trying to write a diverse book. Like, I had this gay story, you can say, but even the narrator is Hispanic, and I maybe only touch on that 3 times because my growing up experience as a Puerto Rican was just very, not typically traditionally Puerto Rican, and everyone I think kind of expects me to cook tostadas and everything, and just like, or speak Spanish, and as you just heard my accent, like I do not do either. And so yeah, but I mean, I don't. A couple people were like, "Oh, have you considered just making him like a white gay teen then, or are you kind of like shooting yourself in the foot twice by making him a gay Hispanic teen?" And I was like, "Well, I could have, but like I think I can be a Puerto Rican, like just be a human too, without all these like other elements." As for like pushback, there was, I will not name a name, but there was an editor who asked my agent, "Has he considered making his character not gay?" Or like, "You mean the book about the boy who wants to go through the procedure to forget that he's gay?" Like, what's my book then? So we were like, "No," and we passed on your offer, but thank you. So yeah, so the Soho team was very amazing about staying true to the book.
Well, I guess as a white writer up here, it's a different question entirely, is who has authority or authenticity to write what story. And for me, and One Plastic Bag, I do get the question a lot because I teach other writers, you know, who can write diversely, or what stories, you know, write what you know. And I tell people, I used to live in the Gambia. I know this woman. I worked with the women in this village. This is a nonfiction story. It's based on a real woman, grassroots environmentalist from West Africa. And this book, from the time I had the seed of finding out about their story till publication, which is tomorrow, is 12 years. And so I tell people that, you know, I think that there is a responsibility when you're going to write outside your culture, and that's, I think, the thing that I would want to impart, is that there is a responsibility to immerse yourself in that culture, be with people, you know, who the story is about, or like your character, because there are things that you think you know and you do not know. And that would just be the message that I would want to put out there about how I feel myself for writing diversely. I also have an interracial family, but that there are things that you won't know unless you fully take that risk and be brave and immerse yourself, surround yourself with people who are in the culture of your character that you are writing.
So I have no worries about Zero Boxer in particular being pigeonholed. I mean, it's a science fiction that does not specifically address diversity, although there is diversity in it. But I think as an author who is a minority, and this kind of touches on a few things that Miranda was saying, you do worry to some extent about having expectations placed on you. And you worry about people saying, "Well, why aren't you writing about your background? Why aren't you writing about your culture?" Or, "Hey, you should be kind of a poster child for these issues, and why aren't you writing more about that?" And I think, if you think about diversity, there's two elements to it, right? There's diverse authors and there's diverse books or diverse protagonists in books, and those are not a circle. They are not overlapping. They're like a Venn diagram of diverse authors who are writing very mainstream books that maybe touch upon diversity, but those are not the core issue. And then you've got authors who, like Miranda, who are maybe not minorities but are writing about issues that are very pertinent to other cultures. And then you've got those in the middle. So I guess what I do worry about a little bit is that the responsibility of writing diversity starts to fall on those who are visibly diverse. And that is something that I worry about a little bit. But I don't personally worry about being pigeonholed in so much as to the extent that you got to write what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about issues in Africa, write about that. If you're passionate about LGBT issues, write about that. If you're passionate about prize fighting in space, then write about that. So I think there is room, hopefully, for the community of writers to reflect the community of the world at large, but also for all that diversity to become a shared responsibility among both minority and non-minority authors.
I mean, I think the issue of pigeonholing is twofold. There's sort of the pigeonholing that I, as a diverse author, I do feel a little bit of that responsibility, to when you come from a community whose voice hasn't necessarily been heard. I mean, it'd be sort of insensitive for me not to realize, I have this platform. The other issue, though, is the pigeonholing of our books, because I think that diverse books really have the unfortunate nature of being easily put onto the diversity shelf and brought out. African American books are brought out during African History Month, when they should be read all year round. And I'm not the first person to say that. Trust me, at least 4 or 5 other people in this audience have said that. You know, I have been struggling with my book being pigeonholed as an LGBT book, you know, and great, yes, making all these lists, but it's about a girl who happens to be intersex. It's not necessarily a book about intersex. And the fact is that people look at diverse books as if, these are for people who view them as mirror books, but they are also more important, probably even as crucially for people who need to view them as mirrors. And the second question was about my submission process. The submission process for None of the Above was awesome. I mean, the people really loved it. But my first book, which had an Asian American main character and was a thinly veiled autobiography, didn't sell because 3 different editors, 3 different houses said this book is too similar to another book with an Asian American protagonist that we have on our list. And I made a conscious decision when I created an intersex character not to make her diverse ethnically, because I was afraid to be too hard to sell. And that's honest, and I hope that people don't hate me for saying that. But
I think it's an important thing to say because it's the truth. As far as writing diverse characters, that's always been something that I think is part of my experience growing up, so I have to utilize that. I can't disengage from that. That's not to say I haven't written books with white protagonists. I have, and I try to incorporate some kind of diversity into those books as well. But when Danielle and I started writing this book, she had taught at a ballet academy, and her experience, she saw Asian dancers, black dancers, white dancers. So we wanted to be true to the diversity that actually existed in that world and represent that. That's why there's not an Indian dancer in here, but there is a Korean American dancer, because that's what the reality was. I have to say, as far as the publishing experience goes, it's a high concept book, so we didn't have trouble in that way, but I was talking to Eileen yesterday, and I did say, if there weren't 3 narrators, if it was just a black narrator and a Korean narrator, I think it would have been a harder sell than with the 3 narrators and having the white narrator in there as well.
I want you to talk a little bit about Cake Literary.
And so Tiny Pretty Things is the first book from Cake Literary, and Danielle and I are the co-founders of the company, and we did write this one ourselves. But what it is a boutique book packaging firm with a strong bent on diversity. Our focus is on bringing high-concept commercial fiction to the market with organic diversity in it. I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and they're still not going to see a lot of themselves reflected in mainstream American literature, which is sad. So that's what we're trying to do with Cake, and we've just started to do the Write for Hire books, and I think we're really excited about what we're going to be putting out there. I think they're going to be fun reads.
That sounds great. We're going to open it up to questions, but you're going to do one last question for everybody, really quick fire. Where do you see diversity in YA, and if there's any voice, and 10 years? I think that.
I'm hoping that the We Need Diverse books movement will no longer be necessary in 10 years. I think that's a long shot, but that's my hope.
That's always the hope, but there are the statistics. 50% of school children are kids of color, and only 10% of books are. I don't think we're going to get to 50% in 10 years. I'm hoping we'll get to 25.
Gosh, I mean, yeah, I think the end goal is exactly what Sona said. Not needing this movement, but I think maybe a more short-term goal is for every child who is going into the library now to be able to find books that are mirrors for their experience and are also windows into other cultures. And I think, if we can get to that point where, there's diversity, not in a specific section, but throughout libraries in the country, I think that would be huge.
My first professor in children's literature was Lucille Clifton, and she has been fighting this for a long time, and she's passed away now. But I I hope, being part of the We Need Diverse Books team, is that we can carry that legacy, expedite that, and not only that we have the diverse books for all the wide range of kids, but when an author comes to the school, I want there to be a range of authors that come to every school so that every kid can say, I can be an author too, that's a possibility.
I hope that our kids are feeling braver about reading certain books and asking for certain titles. This is one of my deep reader shames, and I confess this to David, but when I read Two Boys Kissing on the subway, I live in the Bronx, I removed the jacket because I was scared that people would kind of see me and like, oh, he's reading a book about two boys kissing, he's probably gay, he's probably a homo, da 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 da. So like, I just kind of squash that all together, and it's kind of like, it's terrible, but that's just, I think, the atmosphere that we unfortunately have. So I hope 10 years from now we kind of have a lot of stuff like resolved there.
I don't know what will happen, but I hope that in publishing itself, publishers and editors will look at books and they will not look at a book that's written by a diverse author, that's about diverse characters, and the first thing they think is, this is a diverse author, or this is a diverse character. I want them to look at that book and think, wow, this story is bomb. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I'm hoping that eventually we don't need these panels and these organizations because it's just a part of the world that we live in. My daughter is half me and half my lovely husband who's Korean, and I want her to see herself. I want her to see herself in that world because that is the world we live in. So she should be in books, and everyone should be in books. And I mean, I'm feeling really hopeful that we're going to get there.
I don't know what I have to add to that. I feel like everybody did a really good job. Sitting down here at the end like, oh no, I don't have anything to say.
It sucks to go last.
That was everything that I was thinking. So, good job, guys.
Ours are Pretty Little Liars meets Black Swan.
And I guess my comp titles are Luna by Julia Peters and Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson.
So my book was aptly pitched as Rocky meets Gattaca.
So as a picture book, mine could be compared really to any kid who likes to read picture book biographies or true stories, nonfiction. Kids eat that up. But really, stories like Mamma Miti or The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind are very similar to this book.
I would never dare compare myself to Benjamin O'Leary's Signs, but I've been told that it's for fans who like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe.
I think Ember is Legend meets Gladiator, the movie.
I'm going to choose two movies. I'm going to say Anything, which I love, and The Boy in the Bubble. Like, old TV.
Mine was Silver Linings Playbook and Liar.
That's so much fun.
Thank you guys.
And there's going to be